Bub, have we met before? I forget.
No, we haven't. Let me
Nice,
reveal myself.
nice to meet you.
Yeah, same here.
Would love to hear your interest in BOLT12 and BOLT12 design.
Sure, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Right now, I'm more of in a listening mode, trying to understand what you guys are, ideating here. But yeah, like we are a little behind in our BOLT12 adoption journey per se at LMD or in Lightning Labs, but definitely trying to catch up. So just here to listen to what ideas are being shared, what approaches are being taken, and taking all the feedback and inputs.
Got it. Cool. Sorry, you're that Suheb.
Yeah.
So I do know who you are.
Yeah. If just to introduce myself a little bit. Yeah, I've been collaborating. Like I've been a part of the community member for the last 4 or 5 years, working on Ride the Lightning. I also maintain a Core Lightning API suite called C Lightning REST, along with RTL. And now I work as my day job at Lightning Labs, product managing LMD.
Cool. Thanks for joining.
Glad to have you. I'll go ahead and just give a quick intro for the recording here. So this is BOLT12 UX Jam Session number 4. And this is just a series of calls we've been putting on to discuss kind of how to roll out BOLT12 with the smoothest user experience possible. Kind of where we left off last time. We had a good discussion with some folks from Cash App, and we're just kind of we were looking at the QR code size last time and some of the experiments I was doing with trying to combine BOLT12 offers into BIP21 unified QR codes. And we ended up developing a couple of kind of sample user stories, or just some kind of sketches of user stories for different ways that people might use a BOLT12 offer in the real world. And so in the time since, I've squeezed in time between being at Costa Rica and other places to be able to flesh out those user stories, kind of build them in Figma. So I was going to walk everybody through what I've been working on and get feedback on that. Any comments or questions before I dive into what I've been working on?
So looking forward to seeing what you put together. I'm curious, I had posted a few example use cases or user stories to the issue today. I'm just curious if what you worked on matches any of those, or are they new ones?
Yeah, they matches. I think I invented a fourth one, but yeah, I basically was basing it off what you wrote on the GitHub issue.
Awesome.
It's fairly similar to what we had discussed on the call, anyways. So
yep. Okay.
Oh, I think somebody might be trying to get in. Oh, Val. Cool. So I think Val might be joining us in a second here. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Okay.
Yep.
So
it's
dive in
on a 13-inch display, though. It's
yeah. Let me zoom in a little bit here.
There we go.
Yeah. So I'll start with our first story here, and we'll follow Alice. So Alice is a musician, independent musician, who wants to start accepting tips from her audience using Bitcoin. So the idea is, I'm going to go, she goes to the App Store, downloads a Bitcoin wallet. This is kind of our sample, we call it just Bitcoin wallet. It's just our sample daily spending wallet from the Bitcoin design guide. And she hits install on that, downloads, all of that good stuff. I'm kind of glossing over some of the onboarding here a little bit, because we already have a lot of these screens kind of defined in the daily spending wallet section of the Bitcoin design guide. I'm happy to show off some of those if we need to, but I just don't want to be too redundant. But goes in, creates a new wallet, all that kind of stuff. I've inserted this kind of new screen into the onboarding flow, which is where Alice gets her payment code. And it's like, okay, this is your personal payment code. Maybe we could shorten that to just your pay code. You can share it with the world to get paid in Bitcoin. And so just for the purposes of this, I have it, smushed into a BIP21, but it's basically just a super lightweight offer with no blinded paths or anything like that. She can copy it to her clipboard, or she can hit the share button, or she can just continue and go along with going to her Lightning Wallet home screen. But let's say she hits the share button here, then that could bring up the default iOS share tray here, and then she could share that offer, in any way she wanted to. So a lot of times with the share tray in iOS, you have the option to send it to a printer. So because she deals a lot of times with real world stuff, she might, send that to a printer, let's say, and, we just like skip forward in time a little bit, and maybe she's printed that out on a sign here, and so like her band is versus fiat, and she's printed out like a giant QR code, and that can be used to accept payments when they're doing live shows and stuff like that. Hold on 1 second, let me let somebody into the chat here. Another kind of thing here, I didn't really feel the need to like mock this up too deep in Figma, but I think, like we discussed, we could easily map that onto some kind of BOLT12 address, be similar to a Lightning address. It's just it feeds you a BOLT12 offer instead of an LN URL endpoint. And so she could easily just start giving out Alice at wallet.btc, let's say, and then that would just return the offer in the same way that a Lightning address would. Now, kind of what we dug into on the last call is that like not everybody needs to deal with QR codes if they don't need to. Like not everybody needs to scan real world things. There's other ways that we can use this stuff. So like let's look at some other use cases. So I got this other character here. This is Bob. Bob is like a open source Bitcoin core contributor who likes to remain anonymous. So using the same wallet, Bob could generate more pay codes. So like, Alice, just for the default user, a lot of people may just need one pay code, just like the default may work for them. But for like the slightly more advanced user who, cares about kind of segmenting different areas of their life into different pay codes, Bob has like a settings screen where you can go in, make a new pay code. And we can see one here where like, one has like the inner circle, the family pay code, then has like a pay code so he can receive, zaps from Nostr shitposting, and all of that. So he hits the new pay code button and makes a new one, and like, gives it a name, gives it a description. There's like this basic one, just like that would be like pretty analogous to the one that Alice created. It's just kind of a lightweight pay code that doesn't have any blinded paths, but you can have the extra privacy option, and it throws in like 2 blinded paths with a couple of hops each, so they can get that extra privacy. Hits create pay code, or fills in all this information. Hits create pay code, and then it shows him very similar screen to what Alice got. Gives you the option to share or copy it. And we can flash forward into the future a little bit, and Bob has copied this and put this on the website. And so like I accept donations here. This could just be a BIP21 link with a URI, and it could be the longest URI you imagine because it has like an offer with tons of blinded paths in it because he cares a lot about his privacy. And so anyone on their phone could just tap that link, and they can easily easily pay it from their phone. I put a QR code in there just because I figured, well, it's a website, it might be fun to have something visual on there. But I think the intended use case here is that anyone can easily just tap that link and pay it. I think, yeah, you raised your hand, Steve. What's up?
Well, thanks, Val and Jeff, for joining. In case you're following along, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on, Stephen, can you go back a few screens to where you show a user having, or Bob having the inner circle pay code or offer, and the Nostr shitposting account offer? So for Jeff or Val, either of you, do you see any like technical concerns to this, or do you see this or another way to facilitate this, or does this just look completely fine to you?
I joined in the middle of this, so I take it these was mapped to like a QR code for an offer.
Yeah,
If he's-
inner circle is an offer, and so pay codes is Steven's proposal for like a user-friendly name instead of offer. But technically, correct me if I'm wrong, but inner circle is an offer, and Nostra's shitposting account is an offer.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
The idea being that, like, maybe he has a just for fun Nostr account that, he doesn't like to associate. He's got kind of three identities, right? He's got who his friends and family know him as, and he likes to be able to make transactions with them under that identity. And then he's got another one that's just kind of like a for fun account on Nostr. That is totally fun, and he doesn't really want associated with him professionally. Then he's got a third identity, which is him as a professional Bitcoin Core contributor, contributes to the mailing list, all that kind of stuff, prefers to make his Bitcoin contributions anonymously. So he has three offers, and he prefers to not have he prefers to not have the offer with his like professional Bitcoin Core work associated with his for fun Nostr stuff or with his friends and family in real life.
Yeah,
So
this is like next level privacy, and because it does, even if you use blinded paths and you don't know the recipient's node ID, you could, if he used the same offer across these three identities, it would fingerprint and collect and connect those. So I think it's an interesting take by you.
So there's still though an issue with when you respond with an invoice, you're getting blinded paths in that, and you could potentially correlate. So that's just one sort of concern I would have. Like, so the offers themselves, well, I guess it's the same as the offer. If there's blinded paths in there, if you happen to come across the same QR code, you could potentially see that same person. But I don't know how problematic that is.
I guess in theory you could use different blinded paths on a per offer basis as well, but I don't know. I was just gonna say this looks really cool, and it reminds me of the like privacy app where you can rotate credit cards and use them for different things. If anyone's heard of that,
Privacy.com.
yeah, love privacy.com. So
yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of just like assumed it would be feasible, but I mean, yeah, I get you. Like this, it's probably oversimplified to just say like, well, each one of these is a fully distinct identity. Like, it'd be cool if you could imagine some kind of wallet with an LSP service, and they, operate a lot of, nodes with blinded paths and stuff like that. And like, every time you hit to make a new offer, like maybe it randomizes which hops in the path it gives you, so that every time you make an offer, it's kind of like a unique thing, and you can't correlate that. Like, okay, just because these offers have some of the same blinded paths, like it could be two users of the same wallet, or it could be, it could be two. It could be one person using the same blinded paths, or it could be two users of the same wallet. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So there would be potentially common introductory nodes for nodes that are well connected and people tend to use. So maybe you're gaining some privacy there just because so many offers would use the same intro nodes. I think what I kind of get into what Val was saying, having somehow, I guess, when you construct the offer, being able to select certain blinded paths that potentially different from a different offer. Again, like it could just be that you're connecting with well, or you're using well connected nodes for the introductory node, and maybe it's not a problem at all. It's more of when you're constructing the invoice later with a new set of blinded paths potentially, or we could do something maybe a little different, like randomize things. I guess it depends too on the amount that you're sending. So we could potentially change the blinded paths based on the amount, because you would have different liquidity needs across different blinded paths. Or capabilities, I should say.
I got you.
But yeah, the signing pub key would be different per offer, so you at least have that. So potentially they couldn't be correlated.
Gotcha. So it sounds like it's feasible, but like requires further exploration, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just some subtleties in the details.
Yeah. Got it. That makes sense. Take note of that. Cool. Ready for me to move on? Okay. I'm going to move on because I can't hear anything. Yeah, so I think it's pretty much Bob's story. Like I said, I mean, it's basically just like, yeah, you know, you could very easily tap that link and it should, you know, in theory, open up a Bitcoin wallet. So yeah, then I'm going to move on to Charlotte. So like Charlotte is a content creator and she operates primarily on Nostr. This is kind of a growing thing I'm noticing, like the Nostr now has content creators now. So, you know, she goes through a pretty similar flow to Alice, goes, downloads the Bitcoin wallet, all of that, gets her payment code generated. And then, you know, when she hits the share and opens up the share tray, she can choose Damus from the share tray. And then Damus doesn't have these features. Obviously, I'm just, you know, speculating what this might look like. You know, so it takes the offer text, routes that over to Damus. So when Damus opens up, it recognizes what it interprets as a BOLT12 offer. This looks like a Bitcoin Lightning offer. What would you like to do with it? Add it to a note, add to my profile. You know, because feasibly somebody could just want to, you know, share it in a note. But she chooses add to my profile. And honestly, I didn't really feel like there was a whole lot to mock up here. Yeah, I mean, I took my own profile screen and just, you know, mapped Charlotte's, you know, imagery and text on top of it. But I mean, we already have kind of like an option within Damus to send somebody Bitcoin. And I think right now it just goes to the LNURL endpoint, but you could just totally feasibly also make that map to a BOLT12 offer. I think that on a technical level, we would have to explore, you know, updating like the profile update event. So there's a NIP for like a profile update event within Nostr. I don't see any reason why you couldn't also like update that to include a BOLT12 offer, and just the existing, you know, Bitcoin tipping option in Nostr could map to that. Hey, you got a question?
Yeah. So I think there can just be like add to a note. I guess I'm not understanding that use case, and I feel like there can just be add to my profile.
Yeah, I mean, that could be an option too.
Well, or let me restate that. I guess like under the hood, I think there only needs to be a one-time operation, which is telling your Nostr client, in this case Damus, that hey, this is my BOLT12 offer, and that can be done in settings like how LNURL is handled today, and then that's all the information Damus needs, and then separately the user can choose to display or hide in their profile and to have it enabled or not for posts. So I do see separation there that could make sense for a client, but it still only requires adding the BOLT12 offer once. So in my mind, I would disconnect those two.
Yeah, I think that what I was thinking for the note use case was just like, I don't know, it's like, hey, I'm throwing a, you know, sometimes people like do like event, you know, like set up Bitcoin payments for like events that they host, like conferences and beefsteaks and stuff like that. So like, you know, I see this very common use case where people like spin up these BTC Pay server instances to do these like event payment kind of things. So like, you know, you could also almost like you're tweeting out like, hey, if you pay this offer, then that guarantees you a ticket to the event or something like that. So that would be like a use case for just like, you know, it's essentially the effect of like, if you feed text data over to Twitter, it's like, well, do you want to tweet this? And so it's like the same thing with like Nostr. It's like, well, do you want to note this? But yeah, I mean, you're right. Like you may not need to, it may not be necessary. So yeah, then I'll move on to our other character here. That's Dan. So Dan, you know, just Dan likes to invest. He DCAs into Bitcoin every day. So he's got, you know, a BTC exchange service. So I just called it BTC exchange just to mock it up. So he can kind of go into the settings for his Bitcoin exchange and set up automatic withdrawals. So he ticks on the auto withdrawal box, and then it gives him like an option for a time frame. So he goes to the drop down, he chooses once per week, and then it wants a funds destination from him. And he has the option to put in a Bitcoin address or an offer code. I guess some people might feasibly want an on-chain withdrawal. So yeah, he goes to the exact same Bitcoin wallet. Oops, this one still says Dan. You can tell I copy paste with that. Or that's the one still said Alice. Anyhow. So yeah, it goes to this pretty much the same flow as Alice, generates a payment code, can use the share tray, or I think in this case, he would really be probably using the copy button. So we could probably ignore the share tray in this use case, but you can hit the copy button and paste that into the Bitcoin exchange for the funds destination, hit save. And I think in a far off future where we have async payments, hopefully not too far off, that's all he has to do. I mean, it basically just automatically withdraws to his wallet once per week, and the LSP holds on to the payment until he pulls the wallet out. I think we're going to have BOLT12 offers before async payments based on my current understanding. So like maybe some kind of workaround would be that he gets a text message every single week. And so this is like, the automated phone number for the Bitcoin exchange. It is sending him a text message once, every single Friday. It's time for your weekly exchange withdrawal. Click here so that we can send Bitcoin to your wallet. So, iOS kind of condenses the links down, but he taps that. I can mock this up if necessary, but let me just finish my part real quick. I'll address what you're saying. Opens up a link to a website, and it basically is like the website is basically just saying that you can okay, you need to open your wallet in order to facilitate this withdrawal. And if you want to be real fancy about it, like a lot of times with like Swan Bitcoin and stuff like that, when you define a withdrawal method, you get to type in like a name for the withdrawal method. So you could say like, okay, this is my Trezor, or this is my Unchained Capital account, or whatever. So Dan could totally just say like, this is my, simple Bitcoin wallet account. He could give it a name. So when it redirects him to this website, it could say, hey, please open up the My Simple Bitcoin wallet so that we can send you your payment. Once it hits that website, that triggers their systems to try and retry that payment multiple times. So he opens up the wallet, and then the payment goes through. So that's like a workaround in terms of async payments that I was thinking of, and it sounded like we had a question. Oh, that was a chat, I think. Or an iOS notification.
I just meant that it could be a text or an iOS notification, but that's not important.
Nice. Can you trigger like an iOS notification from like a text message or wait?
I guess sorry. I just meant that like the exchange's iOS app could just send a notification to him. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. Like if we assume like, yeah, this is like an app, not a website, then yeah, like it could just send a push notification via iOS.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that would work. And I mean, it'd be cool is like, maybe you could imagine maybe the exchange's app kind of like integrates with maybe it has some kind of integrations with like all of the Bitcoin wallets. One feature I've been loving on Damus recently, which is a workaround until like iOS will let us map specific Bitcoin wallets onto the Bitcoin prefix. But one thing I like that it does is that like when you want to do a zap, it brings up this screen and gives you like a list of all the possible Bitcoin wallets you can choose from. I love that because it makes it so that like, you don't have that annoying thing where you tap on a BIP21 link and then it just defaults to the last wallet you installed. So yeah, I mean, the BTC exchange thing could totally just, give a, what am I trying to say? It could, give him a push notification. You tap on the push notification, and then it could prompt him to choose a wallet, and then he chooses the Bitcoin wallet he wants, and it, sends the funds there. Yeah.
Just one thing to note: the initial version of the BOLT12 spec had this concept of reoccurring payments, but it was removed. And maybe edit back later, but I mean, shouldn't really plan on that. where essentially in this case, like you would give an offer to the exchange just like you are here, and it would specify the period or the frequency of payments, and it would have to essentially I suppose basically implement the sending on of the recurring payments itself, of course, and there wouldn't be any really interaction other than the initial setup.
Right, but this, I mean, to be clear, this use case will work. All these use cases will work with what's being shipped this year, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I understand that, Jeff. Thanks for that. Yeah, I remember hearing about that the all that stuff was removed from the spec. I think in terms of the recurring withdrawal here, I was thinking that was just like a backend function that was running on the exchange's server.
Mhm.
That they're basically
Yeah, either way, they'd be running something, whether it's proprietary or part of the actual spec. And the funds destination, is this terminology something that's sort of been agreed upon as far as using an offer, or is there still debate on that? Just curious.
Well, for that one, I guess I was just thinking that like some people still might want on-chain addresses. So I think, I mean, I might be oversimplifying this a little bit by saying, just trying to simplify it down to funds destination. Because it's funny, like if you look at like Swan Bitcoin, that's one I think of frequently when I think of automated funds withdrawals. And they have to give you like a whole list of stuff like, okay, if you want to, withdraw your funds, here's all the possible things you can give us. You can give us a single on-chain address. You can give us an XPub, a ZPub. I think there was like a couple of things. You can connect with like I think it was like the Unchained API or something to that effect. Like there's like I feel like there's like 5 different things that you can give them for your automated withdrawals. So I might be oversimplifying this a little bit, but I guess I was just thinking that like an exchange where somebody DCAs into Bitcoin, they probably don't want to have to like limit and say like, okay, you can only use offers now. It's just saying that like we want to be able to add offers to the list of possible things that you can withdraw from.
Gotcha.
But just to clarify, especially for the audience, anyone listening to this later, sort of, I think our goal with these design jams and the Figmas that Stephen's put together is to progress towards like a best practices that will be incorporated in the Bitcoin design guide, which is just guidance. It's a reference. It's best practices to hopefully help many wallets that are having the design for this, but it's certainly not required. And as far as this, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Stephen, you created this week. It's your view. So there's definitely not consensus on it yet in terms of vocabulary and anything. Any of us can chime in now, people can chime in later. It's just the starting point of a conversation on that.
Yeah, exactly. This is just a very kind of like quick design sprint to try and get something that we can look at and discuss together.
But if there's not any more questions or comments on what Stephen just presented, I guess well, first of all, thank you, Stephen, for putting this together. Like having something visual, something to actually comment on is super valuable. So thanks for your time. I think a huge part of the complexity and where we can add the most value in the design guidance is designing for supporting BOLT11, LNURL, and BOLT12, and what there's going to be a period of time where at least BOLT11 and BOLT12 need to be supported, and then in many experiences also LNURL. So what does that look like? What's the guidance? Curious what other people's thoughts are on that, and whether, Stephen, did you want to like use this design jam time to like real time sketch things out around this, or should we take it as homework for you or someone else to do, and then we discuss in 2 weeks?
I'm happy to sketch stuff out right now if everybody's interested in it. I feel like usually we end up just like getting into so much questions and conversation that we never end up having time for that. But if I'm happy to do some of that right here.
Okay, great.
My initial thoughts on that in terms of like BOLT11, LNURL, and BOLT12, and on-chain, and all of that is like kind of a point that you iterated back when we that you came up with when we were starting the like BIP21 unified QR project, which is that I think like the absolute most important thing is just that wallets support scanning these formats. So like it's more important for a wallet to be able to support scanning multiple formats and sending to multiple formats than it is for them to be able to receive to multiple formats. Because if they can scan it and read it, and if they can understand what it is, then they can hopefully send to it. And if they're not capable of sending to it, at least if they know what it is, if it's able to parse like, oh, this is LNURL, I can't touch this, then it can at least express that to the user a little bit better. I mean, it really just seems to me like, while I think that BOLT12 is going to offer like a lot of advantages over LNURL, in the short term, I don't see why wallets shouldn't support LNURL, because I mean a lot of services use LNURL, and like it's out there in the wild. A lot of people are using it, so it doesn't really seem like a detriment or a harm to just go ahead and like add LNURL support to your wallet.
Yeah, I mean, I think BOLT12 offers, it fixes several disadvantages to LNURL around privacy, censorship resistance, and security. So,
Agreed.
and non-custodial mobile wallets. So for wallet developers and users of those eventual wallets that want to adopt BOLT12 and eventually async payments, I'd love to see this group and whoever else wants to join us think through the most optimal deployment and adoption path. Because obviously, or I totally agree with what you said about the most important point for adoption is getting as many wallets as possible to be able to send to BOLT12 and eventually async payments. Because once you're at that point, I mean, if you're near or at 100% for that, yeah, it doesn't. If you're a wallet developer and designer and want to design a wallet that receives this, you don't care if other wallets don't receive. You just care that they send. But we do need to design for a period of time where we're not near or at 100% sending. Initially, there's going to initially just be one wallet that launches support with BOLT12. It's going to have to think about how to show it to the user, how to show other options, and then there'll be 6 or 8 or 10 wallets that support it, and eventually more and more. That's probably going to occur over 1, 2, 3 years. So would love to get into so clearly simple guidance for all wallets is just prioritize adding support for sending to BOLT12 like immediately or as soon as you can. It's I think the design, the UI design and UX around receiving is where I'd love to drill in this design jam and future ones to provide guidance.
Yeah, sure. I've got some ideas, but does anybody else have comments before I start talking? Okay, no. So, I mean, the obvious choice to me is just like try to do BIP21. And we got into this conversation with Rocky last time because he brought up a good point. We're wrestling with the QR code, but like, I mean, the initial tests are pretty good. Like the initial tests are pretty good just in terms of scanning. So like, let me think about this a little bit. Like if we do a BIP21 that includes on-chain, BOLT11, and BOLT12, and I hit receive on, like, I go to my phone, I pull it out, I want to receive $10 from somebody. I type in, $10, and it generates a QR code just for that. It could include an on-chain address, a BOLT11, and a BOLT12 all in one. And the QR code is really dense. but you know, in terms of that, it'll pretty much work with like most modern phones. So we have the plus there that it works with most modern phones. Now, worked pretty good with that crummy Android I did too, but we need to test that further. Now, another
Quick question, Stephen.
Yeah.
Do you know offhand how many blinded paths and how many hops in the blinded path were in your tests?
Yeah, we can pull that up right here. Let me just make sure that I have the right document. Hold on a second. I
Yeah,
forget.
while you're
I'm
pulling
just
that up, I mean, I totally agree to the extent BIP21 works and you can add all three. Fantastic. More testing, the better. But yeah, I mean, I guess with the knowledge I have about it right now is like it sounds more promising than I was expecting. So I think we should definitely pursue it. Wallet should pursue it. But I'm still skeptical that that's the silver bullet for every wallet and use case.
I agree. I want to get into that a little bit. One second. Let me just like to the account that I have my BOLT12 documents stored in got logged out here. So give me a second. Just get logged back into that. Trying to get a 2FA code. Come on.
Another observation I'd have, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but for receiving any given wallet, I don't think is going to care about supporting both BOLT12 and LNURL for receiving. It'll be like one or the other. And if it supports BOLT12, probably it's going to choose BOLT12 and not LNURL. Whereas sending, as previously stated, like all wallets should support sending to all these different formats. Would people agree with that observation? Like I can't think of the use case where a wallet would want to have a BIP21 that has both a BOLT12 and LNURL.
I mean, if the sender doesn't support both, then they would have to do that, right?
Well, but the sender's almost guaranteed. I mean, every sender is going to support on-chain or BOLT11.
Yeah, they'll have that.
So I guess, yeah, to restate my question, is there a use case we can think of where a wallet would want to have a BIP21 that has on-chain, BOLT11, BOLT12, and LNURL?
Maybe just in the spirit of supporting everything in case. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. BOLT11 and LNU are redundant, basically.
Yeah. Again, for sending, yes. But for receiving, I'm not seeing a use case to have all four.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, let me share something else here. So let me share this very window, and we're going to get a little bit of a mirror for a second. A window. Yeah, I'll just share the entire thing. Okay. Can everybody see my screen okay? Assuming so. Okay.
Yes.
So I have this I just put this document here. I put this in the Discord. I created a lot of different QR codes here. On-chain and BOLT11, on-chain BOLT11 and offer with a description, on-chain BOLT11 and 12 with one blinded path with 2 hops, and then another one with 2 blinded paths, 2 hops each. And then I created some offers outside of BIP21 just to be, have something extra to work with here. All of these have a unique emoji assigned to them so you can identify it. And here is my results so far. Went over this a little bit last time, but you can basically look at these and tell, like, this was a Samsung Galaxy A12. It's just like a cheap phone you can get at Walmart for like less than $100 on a prepaid plan. And yeah, I mean, we're able to scan all of these from about 2.5 feet away. Now, these two with the blinded paths were a little bit more difficult. So these are the ones that were much more difficult to scan. But it basically worked. So we would have to do further testing, but to answer your question about like how many paths were they using, it depends on which one of these you're talking about. But I basically repeated all of these tests with Moon on the Samsung Galaxy, then with Phoenix on the iPhone and Moon on the iPhone. So there's a lot of stuff to work with there.
Okay. Well, again, thanks for doing all that work and the detail there. An additional detail that should be shown in that spreadsheet though is how many nodes are in your blinded paths you're testing with.
I'm pretty sure it's 2 hops per path, I think.
And when we say, so I know some of us had confusion over hops in this context. So would that be 2 nodes or 3 nodes?
I think Jeff could answer that question better, because what the offers I'm using are actually being generated by Jeff's script.
Yeah, so those had 2 nodes, so you would think of that as 1 hop.
Okay. Okay.
Double check the code. But...
Yeah, I'd suggest adding that detail to the spreadsheet because it does matter, because there's 2 keys per node. That's around 64 bytes per node that's in a blinded path, and that directly contributes to the size of the offer and the QR code.
Okay, so let me make sure I get this right. So it's 1 blinded path. Jeff, could you repeat that again, please? How much? What do I need to clarify here? How many nodes is this, or hops, or whatever?
Yeah, so I mean, when you think of a hop is essentially a channel between nodes, but in blinded paths, there's like components to this. It's essentially a list of things, and Steve is more accurate in saying it's a list of nodes where it includes the recipient node in there. So if it is if in the code it shows 2 node IDs or pub keys forming that path, then it is actually just 1 hop, if you will, like 1 channel. So basically, the introductory node is the first node in that list. The recipient is the second node, and just 1 channel between them. So if you want more privacy, you would want actually 3 nodes in that list, so you could have 2 hops.
Okay, so if I see 2 nodes in your code, then that means it's 1 hop, because we're talking about that's like a channel between those 2 nodes. And if I wanted it to be 2 hops, I would need a 3rd channel in that list.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay.
I think you can just say 2 nodes and 2 nodes per path or something like that in parentheses.
Yeah,
and then anyone adding up bytes, that would be 128 bytes, because there's 32 bytes per key, 2 keys per node, and there's 2 nodes per path that you tested. So that's 128 bytes right there. And there might even be some overhead to that. I'm not sure. Maybe someone else.
Yeah. So there, one thing I guess maybe it's not quite right in that sense, but there's a little overhead, I guess, with the TLV format. Otherwise, the encoding is, I believe it's like a 1.6 multiplier, but then there's like a different I think there's different modes in the QR code generation, so it actually works out to be like 1.1 multiplier instead of 1.6. The 1.6 comes from the Bec32 format versus just bytes. So there is a small multiplier.
The most important thing to know, though, is just that the size is a function of the number of nodes that are in a blinded path. So that just needs to be understood and then stated in any testing we're doing.
Yeah.
Each implementation will also potentially use a metadata field in the offer, which would contain information that it may need to interpret it. So for instance, LDK, when there's the presence of blinded paths, there will be a 16-byte value in there. So that's some additional data that is not represented in that code that you were using.
Michael, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, hey everyone. Sorry I'm a little late here. I just had a few comments. Stephen, thanks so much for making that Google Doc and Google spreadsheet. It's awesome. I've done a lot of this in the previous testing. Just maybe 1 or 2 suggestions I had, and I could follow up in the doc, was I see in some of your notes you kind of had speed to scan. One thing that in my docs that I previously did, I created a column. It was like time to scan in seconds. And there's a big difference between like instant 2 seconds and 6 seconds, right? Like struggling, like we know what we're doing. We know how to hold it. You're probably doing it in a well-lit room on a computer, right? And so I feel like 5 seconds and having to fumble, like, yes, it's true, but it does scan, but 6 seconds doesn't feel like a success to me, right? So like time to scan in seconds, maybe even documenting the physical distance while scanning it. 6 inches versus 1 feet, 2 feet, 3 feet matters. A lot of these experiences, you're scanning some like a bartender 5 feet away from you, right? So
Yeah.
Those details matter. So anyway, I'm happy to jump in and get a little bit more granular with you there.
Sure.
And then do we have like a column that says like total string length as well? Because that's the thing that I've often been helpful for me. Like I find 150 to 250 character length QR code pretty scannable, and like 300 and above gets pretty clunky. So even just kind of visually seeing that in the spreadsheet may be helpful. So anyway, I'll jump in and contribute. This is great. Thank you.
Yeah, it sounds good. I'd be happy to start being more granular. I think I was just being a little lazy and just kind of being like, this feels normal to me. I'll go ahead and say on all these, yeah, I totally get what you're saying about the time. If pretty much all of these were instant, or else I would have noted it. But it might make sense, like you're saying, to just actually record the time accurately. Trying to do like another stopwatch or something, like a stopwatch running separately from the front phone to get it accurately. So we could add a time column. And in terms of string length, push back on that slightly. What might be a better metric instead of the string length would be QR code size, like QR code dimensions. Because one thing about it is that you might have a situation, like I've noticed sometimes thinking about QR codes, like sometimes like if you need to add another pixel on either end of the QR code, you end up like you end up increasing the number of columns and rows just by adding a single pixel on either axis. And so like what I'm trying to say is that like you might have a QR code that's like let's say the string length is like 101 versus 110. Well, they might actually have the same QR code size, because like once you end up needing that extra unit of space, it just like pushes it. You know what I'm trying to say? I'm having trouble verbalizing what I'm trying to say, but it's like the size of the string and the size of the QR code don't map perfectly linearly, because they're like, you sometimes, even if you don't need all of the space in the QR code, you still have to go up to a larger size just to facilitate that extra space. Does that make sense?
For sure. And like there's just so many different variables here. Like I don't think, this is why I also had a hard time trying to make like a Google Doc that was really helpful. It was like only I understood it because I was doing my own. Like another big thing is like the level error correction levels. There's like 4 different level correction levels you can do in the QR code encoding, right? You can be really lax, or you can be really strict, right? That plays a huge difference in scannability of it. And I know it may sound silly, but like the lighting, like the sun, we were trying to do this out in the garden at the Bitcoin conference, and it was really hard with direct sunlight, right? Like we're probably testing in a really nice, well lit room on a computer, which is backlit, full intensity. So like one of those things changes and it becomes unscannable. So I'm not sure the best way of doing it. So just throwing out some ideas.
Yeah, that sounds good. If you want, I think anyone can edit. So yeah, if you feel free, if you want to monkey around with this document and add columns you like, just feel free to do whatever you want to do to it.
Thanks.
Would love to help. But kind of though, to push us in a different direction. So like I guess my initial results were that it works pretty good with my QR codes, but TBD, more testing needed. I think that the purpose of these design explorations from this over the past 2 weeks here was that we don't actually need QR codes all the time, and that was kind of like what came out of the discussion with Rocky last time. It's like I'm using the QR code in this story here with Alice, but for Bob, Charlotte, and Dan, none of them actually need QR codes because like Bob is just using his website. And so like, you know, because it's going through the website, he can just use like the BIP21 link, and that can just, you know, that can just open up a Bitcoin wallet automatically, or, you know, the user can copy and paste it, or I mean, you know, feasibly, if Bob, you know, makes his website a little bit more sophisticated, then, you know, it can deliver fresh links every single time somebody visits the website, or fresh, you know, offer codes or whatever. Like it can be like BTC Pay or something like that. So he doesn't need a QR code necessarily on this website. And then, like, you know, for Charlotte's use case, she's embedding this in her Nostr profile. So there's never a QR code at any point during this situation. And then, like, you know, for the exchange scenario, I mean, that's totally a copy paste kind of thing. So I don't know that like the QR code is even needed during any one of those scenarios. Now, so yeah. Anyways, we have a question.
Yeah, or just a comment from me.
Yeah.
And also, I'll need to hop in 3 to 5 minutes or so. I still think so. We can spend a few minutes now, but maybe in the next design jam. I think the thorniest problem is like take the Damus Zaps scenario example, and let's say I'm a Phoenix user or something, and that so I don't have I can't do Zaps right now. I'm a non-custodial mobile user. Now I'm excited because they have a new BOLT12 feature, and so I add that to my profile in Damus just as you show here. But then everyone's trying to zap me, and they all fail because every other wallet doesn't support sending to BOLT12. So during that transition period where it goes from 5% working to 20 to 50 to 70 and then eventually 100, what should I do?
Yeah.
And maybe this is the use case or argument that to have LNURL and BOLT12. But in this case, if a non-custodial mobile wallet supports BOLT12 or LNURL, it's starts to gray the non-custodial part. I mean, you're trusting a third party then with creating your invoices, which opens you up to theft. Whether it's from not necessarily directly from the third party, but the third party could have a rogue employee. The third party could have an attacker who they don't even know has attacked their system and steals 1% of all money or 1% of all invoices. And that's really hard to detect on Zaps because like you get so many Zaps, it's very easy to like not pay attention to 1%. So
yeah, and a lot of the technical details about the payment are kind of under the hood from these Nostr clients. Like they're not exposing all of this detail about like how the Lightning payment was routed and the UI. So you're right. I mean, if something got scraped off the top, you would probably never know within the client itself. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we need to start thinking about this. I mean, it's going to be messy. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I think one sort of thing is like we shouldn't be encouraging people to go jamming BOLT12s into their Nostr profiles until there's a certain level of adoption, not necessarily adoption from people, but adoption among node implementations and then wallets. So that would be one step, but I mean, you could also have some kind of scenario where, like, let's say a user has an option. There's already like a field where people could put a Lightning address in their profile. What if they could put a BOLT12 offer and a Lightning address, and you kind of feed the wallet? Maybe there's a way that you can feed the wallet the one that it's expecting. So if it's a wallet that doesn't support sending the BOLT12, you can feed that the Lightning address for the Zap to be done. I'm not sure.
I think the weird thing about a wallet supporting both LNURL and Bolt12 on non-custodial mobile wallet is that you have a real mixed message to your users. Then it's like, well, sometimes when you're receiving it's secure, and other times there's security vulnerabilities, and it's super technical, so it's really hard to convey that to users.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I guess I was thinking about it from the perspective of like someone who has a bajillion Bitcoin wallets, and like it's like, okay, well, I'll just fill in both fields. But I mean, yeah, for someone who like we're trying to get onto Bitcoin for the first time, we don't want them to feel like they have to have multiple wallets just to use Bitcoin. You know, like we don't want to tell them that they have to download 2 Bitcoin wallets just so that they can receive some zaps from some people and some zaps from some other people. Yeah, that's messy.
Also, with just Bolt12 without async payments, this non-custodial mobile experience has the challenge of it's not 100% reliable to be able to respond to onion messages because your node's on your phone. And I haven't seen good data yet on how high a percentage that something like a Phoenix wallet is able to receive payments today. I know that they just adopted some new iOS API, which is supposed to improve it, and maybe it's as high as 95%, 98%, 99%. I'd like to see data. Even if it is, though, whether it's 1, 2, 5% failure rate, that's still, I don't know. Maybe we can debate that's acceptable in an interim period, but it's definitely not where we want to be at for the medium to long term. And then, so, if we conclude that async payments is required for this experience, then that also that affects how we think about adoption and deployment and timeframes.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think we have to assume that async payments are necessary for this experience because, like, I mean, I can't imagine the Bolt12 offer being useful without async payments. Here's a situation where Bolt12 offers are useful without async payments. Okay, I'm a full node operator. So great. Basically, what the Bolt12 offer does is it makes it so that like I don't necessarily have to use BTC Pay Server for every single payment interaction, right? Like I still might want to use it for like a web store merchant experience, but it just means that I can be a full node operator and I can put a Bolt12 offer out into the world, and that will always work for me. That I don't see the Bolt12 offer being super useful for a mobile Lightning node because like I just you put it out into the world and it's not useful anymore. Like it just as soon as you turn your phone off, it stops being useful. So I don't know. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that? Am I wrong there?
No, I agree with you. I mean, in the rosiest of pictures, maybe 99, assuming you don't literally turn your phone off and you're not literally out of internet coverage, and then maybe 99% of the time your phone would be able to communicate over offers and issue invoices and receive money. But even then, arguably, I mean, if you're a small business owner, or I mean, if you're a babysitter or a gardener or a handyman or whatever, and you're getting paid, you don't want to miss 1% of your payments. It's just bad user experience. So
yeah, I'll learn more maybe this Wednesday night at our next Socratic seminar. We're having Natesh, who did some work on Blixt Wallet, is going to talk about having L&D running in the background on a mobile Android wallet. I thought that was really interesting. Because it's a different design, like engineering design paradigm that I'm used to. It's just like, okay, let's just let the node run all the time. So I'm curious to learn about his process building that. But obviously that isn't going to work for iOS, at least with iOS's current restrictions and all of that. So it seems more of like a temporary workaround to me. But I'll report back after I've, learned what he has to say. Okay, yeah, so we still have some work here. So it's kind of like the summary is like, okay, we still need to do, I know we're on the hour here, so I need to wrap this up as well. I know you're trying to go see, but like summary is like, Michael and I still need to do more QR code testing. BOLT12 may not be useful for a mobile user without async payments. And how do we deal with this in the interim when not everybody supports every payment format? So I think over the next 2 weeks, what I need to be working on are some kind of mock-ups of error states and things like that, things failing to scan BOLT12 and all of that. And I need to be doing, more structured, more rigidly structured scanning for my BIP21s and all of that. Yeah. Any other thoughts about next steps for me over the next 2 weeks? Anyone?
Stephen, I put it in the chat. It sounds like you agree, right? I feel like QR code is pretty much in person only. That's where we kind of landed with Rocky and our design team was like that. That's really it, right? And so there's on device, like from a computer, but also printable, right? So I think what's great about BOLT12 is you can slap that up and print it, and have tips and the tip jar, and people playing guitar on the side of the street can use it, right? So. Yeah, I totally agree that like QR codes is pretty limited and moving. I would love to get rid of a QR code world, and I'd love to get rid of a copy and paste world, right? And I think Steve mentioned NFC and the restrictions you mentioned as well. But we'll get to NFC one day. So yeah, I'm happy to help, and sorry if I'm being a pain trying to get very granular. But as we think about millions and millions of people and all kinds of use cases, 5 feet away in direct sun. Is even tough with some modern phones as well, and like thinking about other countries where a 5-year-old Android is the norm. We do need to be really aggressive on our testing. So
I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah, so thank you. I'll definitely work and help as much as I can.
Okay, sounds good. Great. Well, I think I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording here and leave everybody. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Later. Let's see.